Something is moving in Santa Clara, and it doesn't look loud at first, until you start connecting the dots. One decision that looks small on paper could mess with the offense's speed and depth. There's an interior O-line fix being floated that could change how Brock Purdy breathes in the pocket. An elite pass rush name keeps hovering around the 49ers' orbit in the weirdest way. And then there's a receiver situation that, if it's really as broken as it sounds, turns into a full-on culture test. And that's why this matters. When you put all four of these stories together, you start to see the same theme staring back at you. Are the 49ers about to protect the roster's safety blanket, or chase immediate impact and live with the consequences? Because the most insane part of this whole puzzle only makes sense at the end. Would you make that bet? There are a lot of moves that fans argue about. Star trades, first-round picks, flashy signings, but sometimes the real dominoes are the ones nobody wants to talk about. Depth guys. Good enough pieces. The kind of players you don't notice until they're gone, and suddenly you're scrambling in Week 10. And right now, San Francisco might be deciding whether they're keeping two Robinsons, or moving on from both. Start with DeMarcus Robinson. The idea last offseason was simple. Add a veteran wide receiver who can stabilize the depth chart. The front office knew he'd missed the first few games because of a suspension, but it never really felt like he got fully back on track. Yes, he had that monster wildcard game against the Eagles. 6 catches, 111 yards, a touchdown. He showed up when the lights were bright, but over the full season, it didn't match the hope behind the signing. And now, The Athletic has him listed as a potential salary cap cut. He's not on some massive deal, but when a team starts looking at cutting even smaller contracts, that's not just saving money. That's the front office telling you what it values most. Then there's Brian Robinson Jr. He wasn't a disaster. He actually did his job as the RB2 behind Christian McCaffrey. Played all 17 games, 400 rushing yards, 4.3 a carry, 2 touchdowns. That's functional, solid, reliable. But here's the cold NFL question. Is that production replaceable? Because if you've got McCaffrey and you're high on 2025 rookie Jordan James, who only saw action in garbage time of the playoff loss to the Seahawks, then the temptation is real. You start thinking, do we really want to spend here? Or do we roll with youth and put resources somewhere else? Be honest. This is where the faithful splits in half. Do you keep both Robinsons because a long season punishes thin rosters and nobody wants emergency snaps from the bottom of the depth chart? Or do you move on, take the risk, and go hunting for speed, because the offense needs more juice, and neither DeMarcus nor Brian is known as the true speed answer. Speed without reliability can get you beat, but reliability without speed can get you stuck. And the scary part is, if you cut depth and Plan A breaks, Kyle Shanahan has to become a magician again. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it turns into third and long survival mode. Now, if you're wondering why this conversation even matters, it's because roster trimming like this usually points to a bigger swing somewhere else. And that takes us straight to the interior offensive line, the kind of problem that doesn't go viral on Sunday until it ruins your whole game plan. There's a specific headache the 49ers have to fix, and it's sitting at left guard. Spencer Burford came into 2025 on thin ice and didn't help his case. He allowed the highest pressure rate among starting left guards in the league last season, and now he's heading toward free agency. Ben Barch is also hitting free agency, serviceable as a backup when Burford missed time, but not much more. Connor Colby is around, but he looked overwhelmed when he had to step in. So in plain English, San Francisco needs a starting left guard, and, as luck would have it, the 49ers have been tapped as the perfect landing spot for Steelers guard Isaac Seumalo. Here's the thing. Seumalo isn't just a name. The argument is that he's been one of the league's better guards, even if nobody hypes guards the way they hype wide receivers and edge rushers. He's played in 2 drastically different schemes, started with the Eagles, moved to Pittsburgh, and he's shown he can win with athleticism in zone concepts and power in gap schemes. Last year, his numbers were eye-catching. A 97.3% pass block win rate, second among guards. A 76.9% run block win rate, fourth. A 78.5 PFF pass blocking grade, also fourth. And he didn't commit a single penalty all season. That's the kind of profile that helps Brock Purdy immediately. Because the pressure Purdy saw last year wasn't just off the edge, It was up the gut, straight into his face. And it's not only about the QB. It can help Christian McCaffrey too. The counting stats were there, but the efficiency wasn't always what you want. McCaffrey's 3.9 yards per carry was his lowest since 2020. The best work came when he was running off tackle, 5.7 yards per carry outside of Trent Williams, 5.0 outside of Colton McKivitz. Between the tackles is where he got stuffed more often. If you stabilize left guard, you're not just fixing a spot. You're changing how the run game hits, how the play action sells, and how the entire offense flows. And this is where the debate gets spicy, because guards are getting paid real money now. A lot of fans hate the idea of spending big on interior O-line because it doesn't look sexy on a thumbnail. But the pitch here is that Seumalo, heading into his age 33 season, might come cheaper than a similar player in his prime. It's not the move that makes headlines like a star wideout or a blockbuster edge trade, but it might be the move that makes everything else work. So what's your take? Do you spend on the boring fix because it makes the offense function, or do you chase flash and hope the line holds up? Because here comes the contradiction. Even if you fix the offense, the defense still has a glaring problem. The 49ers finished 2025 with an NFL low 20 total sacks. That's not just a stat. That's a January problem. That's a 3rd and long and the QB feels comfortable problem. And that's why one name keeps floating around in trade talk. Maxx Crosby has been loosely connected to the 49ers in speculation. Now there's a weird off-field twist that created a new, indirect link. Crosby revealed he joined the ownership group of Leeds United, a Premier League soccer club. And the connection to the 49ers? 49ers Enterprises bought a minority stake in Leeds back in 2018, then increased involvement in 2023, and now team executive Parag Marathe serves as the club's chairman. So Crosby and the 49ers ownership group now share a business relationship through Leeds United. Let me say this, that does not mean Crosby is suddenly coming to the Bay. It's notable, it's interesting, it'll fuel conversations, but it likely has little direct impact on his NFL future. What does drive the speculation is that his relationship with the Raiders has grown strained, and when an elite pass rusher might be available, people will link him to any team desperate for pressure, especially a team that just posted 20 sacks. The problem is the price. Las Vegas would still hope to keep Crosby, but if a deal got forced, the ask could be enormous. There's talk they'd want compensation comparable to the Micah Parsons blockbuster, 2 first-round picks and a player. But not everyone believes Crosby would command that exact return. ESPN's Adam Schefter said he doesn't think it would be 2 firsts and a player, but he added that any deal would take a first-round pick at minimum. And that's the fork in the road for the faithful. Would you pay a first, maybe more, for a pass rusher who changes the defense instantly? Or do you think that's an all-in move that strips your flexibility to rebuild the D-line rotation, fix wide receiver, and keep the roster balanced? Because when you trade heavy, you're not just buying Crosby, you're buying the pressure to nail every other decision with fewer resources. Now here's the part where this whole thing turns from roster talk into something deeper. Because there's a receiver situation being described as a breaking point, one that could become the cap and culture lever that funds everything else. The relationship between Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers has been framed as reaching its limit, with the idea that it's only a matter of time before the two move on. Sportscasting's Gia Nguyen pointed to Aiyuk as the leading cut candidate amid the tension. The text says Lynch and Shanahan have said Aiyuk has played his last game in a 49ers uniform. It also says Aiyuk didn't play a snap in 2025 while recovering from a torn MCL and ACL, and it claims he skipped mandatory meetings and rehab sessions and stopped showing up at the facility. If that's accurate, that's not a simple contract dispute anymore. That's a trust and commitment fracture. The cap angle in the text is blunt. It says the 49ers voided the remaining $27 million in guaranteed money on his 4-year, $120 million deal. It also says that, according to Over the Cap, San Francisco has about $41 million in cap space and could free up an additional $6.3 million by cutting Aiyuk after June 1st. Think about that for a second. If a June 1st move happens, it doesn't just change the wide receiver room. It changes how the roster gets built for 2026. It creates real flexibility to chase 2 huge needs, pass rush and wide receiver depth, and still address the offensive line without being stuck in a tug of war. And this is where the fanbase argument gets loud. One side will say, "Move on, nobody is bigger than the logo." The other side will say, "You don't just walk away from a talent that was once viewed as a cornerstone." But if what's being described is true, this isn't about talent on Sundays. It's about availability, chemistry, and the locker room. And now you can see how the puzzle locks together. If the 49ers are considering moving on from depth pieces like the Robinsons, while also staring at a situation like Aiyuk that could reshape cap space, it starts to look like a more aggressive reset of the skill group. Leaner, faster, more intentional. If you stabilize left guard with a player like Sayamalo, you give Purdy cleaner reads, and you give Shanahan more freedom to dial up the full bag of tricks. And if the pass rush remains the nightmare it was, 20 sacks, then the temptation to swing big for an elite edge is obvious. So here's the craziest part of all of it. This might not be 4 separate stories at all. It might be one bigger decision. Protect the roster's safety blanket, keep depth, avoid risk, or chase immediate impact and accept that some parts of the roster get thinner. If you're building the 2026 49ers, what's your first move? Cut, sign, or trade? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want this kind of breakdown every time something shifts in Santa Clara, make sure you're subscribed.